The reason I asked this is because we had a guest here yesterday, and he talked about, two names were sent to the NJC. The first, we hear that the State Judicial Commission showed preference for one of the candidates, saying that they just showed preference for one of the candidates, saying they would rather this one. The NJC on their own went for the second candidate, saying that given a reason, which the executive arm of government says is not known to law, given a reason to that, and then sending it to the executive arm of government. Now, if the executive arm of government had any objections to that, couldn't they have written to the NJC to say, we don't agree with you on this, we would like you to recommend? Because the Constitution seems to be very clear on how it should happen. The governor can appoint subject to the recommendation of the NJC. The NJC is clearly spelled out there, and also subject to the appointment, to the ratification of the State House of Assembly. So it will seem that all of these organs are equally important, as at any point, one of them can terminate the other. For instance, if there is no recommendation from the NJC, it will mean that the governor might not be able to appoint, and it would also mean that you will not be able to ratify. If the governor appoints and you do not approve, his appointment is null and void. So don't you think that in all the actions, one arm of government or the other seems to have, not one arm now, but one party in the appointment of the NJC seems to have been bypassed?
Which part was bypassed?
The NJC in this particular instance, because they never recommended Justice Agumagu, which you have finally, your arm of government has finally ratified.
I just said here, a valid court judgment was given based on the recommendation of the NJC. What went to court? The
NJC, sorry, beg your pardon. Did the court now then say that you could appoint Justice Agumagu? Was that what the court said very categorically?
First and foremost, I'm not the Attorney General. But what I'm aware of, in clear terms, that the NJC recommendation was subject of litigation. And the interpretation that could be adduced from the judgment was that the NJC erred in law to have sent the name of Justice Dizzy Okocha, and did say the name that should be sent should be, and made it, that was his judgment. So my argument would be, the NJC being the superior body of lawyers was to appeal. My argument. Which they say they have. Thank you. Now, if they have done the appeal, which I think they did, you also will agree with me it would be unfair to abrogate the appeal by suspending the party, the chief judge. Because if, for instance, they have appealed and have allowed the chief judge, we won't have been in the position where we are. What all parties will be asking for accelerated.
But there can be no chief judge when they have not recommended to the executive arm of government to appoint.
What you are saying is, what they recommended was not what was sent to the House. But I'm telling you that a valid court judgment negatived that recommendation.
Does the court then take the place of the NJC in recommendation?
Yes, let me come in here.
Wait. Did the court say...
The court itself is part of the judicial process. And all laws in this country are to be interpreted by the judiciary. And if a valid court have done that interpretation, it does not behove on me or any other person to give contrary interpretation.
But I was thinking that I go back to what Malcolm asked, because we're trying to see that all is well, especially in Rivers State, in the judiciary. And with that court judgment, Malcolm asked a question. Doesn't that mean a fresh start of the processes again? Because it would seem from the Constitution that all four must be adhered to. All four must agree. JSC, NJC, the governor, the assembly. So if we now have the judgment, shouldn't we go back and start all over again?
That question should be directed more to the NJC. Because if the NJC had not taken an illegal route of suspension, more issues would have been discussed on the table.
Okay, are you saying that the court judgment invalidates the part or the right of the NJC to recommend?
Very clear.
Invalidates
yes.
that?
The judgment was based on the recommendation. That was the subject of litigation. If, for instance,
Section 3 to 5, right?
yes,
Not 1 and 2.
Yes, if both of us are disputing the ownership of a house, and the court says that your vendor was not the proper person to convey to you, that rather, the one I have was done properly, my vendor is the right one.
I thought the court said that the governor is not mandated to hook, line, and sinker accept the recommendations of the NJC because it's not a rubber stamp. That does not necessarily mean that the NJC cannot recommend or should not recommend. Or does it invalidate? It's clearly written in the law that NJC has to recommend.
The interpretation of laws of Nigeria is left to the judiciary. It's not to the legislature. We make laws. We don't interpret them. And if the judge, in his wisdom, have reached that judgment, what everybody will be asking...
That's what I'm trying to put across.
What we should be asking is that it should be appealed upon, and secondly, they should accelerate hearing.
Okay.
But what we have is the wrong thing.
All right, let's get some questions in. We're running out of time. We have Henry who says, what would you say about the protest of members of the House of Reps from Rivers State that the governor should respect NJC's recommendation?
We have a civil rule where everybody has a right to express his opinion. But when you say NJC recommendation, I begin to wonder, that is subject to the court judgment. And if the judge has interpreted what he thinks is right, then whose recommendation or opinion should the governor take? It is that of the judge that has interpreted it, and not those that decide to protest.
But has any, because I see Hope asking, he says to ask you, has any governor ever refused recommendation by the NJC before?
You see, in Rivers State, everything is possible. 5 members truncated justice. 27 was less than 5. And nobody said anything. And let me also ask one question here. Has anybody or any judge, any chief judge, been suspended before? The answer is no, by the NJC.
So your way out now is we should wait for, everyone should wait for the appeal, or what?
Yes, my way out here, if you ask me, is that the NJC should respect the court ruling.
Because I wanted to just go ahead and just read out some text of that judgment, but time wouldn't let me do that. We've been speaking with Honorable Golden Chioma, who is the Chairman, House of Assembly Committee on the Judiciary. That's the Rivers State House of Assembly. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, and we'll be back after this break. Join us again.